and get started. And if other people trickle in while we're going ahead, then they can join us as we go along. So hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jen Apgar, and I work in the Youth Services Department at the Talking Book and Braille Center. My phone number is 800-792-8322, extension 823. My email address is japgar@njstatelib.org. That's J-A, P as in Peter, G-A-R @njstatelib.org. And I am joined today with my colleague, Liz. And Liz, you're muted.
Sorry about that. My name is Liz Burns. I'm the head of Reader Services at TBBC. My email is eburns, that's E-B-U-R-N-S @njstatelib.org. And my extension is 804.
Thanks. And I've also put the Reader Services general email address and phone number, which is tbbc@njstatelib.org, and their extension is 861. And we'll explain a little bit more about that as we go on. We will have time for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, we do ask that you hold them until then, just in case we do answer your question throughout the presentation. But if we don't, please ask that. And I also just want to mention briefly that this presentation is being recorded. So if there's anything that you might have missed and want to go back and watch or want to share with colleagues, please feel free to do so. So to kick us off, I'm going to ask, how familiar are you with us at TBBC? We always just like to know and are curious about that. If you've heard of us, if you've not heard of us, if it's been a while since you've heard of us, you can go ahead and use the chat to answer that, and we'll keep an eye on that. But we are going to go ahead for now and keep on moving along. So as I mentioned, we are the Talking Book and Braille Center. This is our landing page for our website. It's our homepage. And this is a few images of some of our patrons, each with a different device that they read their books on, which we will be talking about more in this later on in this presentation. But to kick us off, I'm going to turn it over to Liz to give us a little bit of history of our library.
Thanks, Jen. And just to give people an understanding of what TBBC is, we are a division of the state library, and we provide library services to New Jersey's blind and print disabled population. We provide audiobooks, Braille, and large print. And our patrons range in age from, I would say, 3 to 103. Many of our patrons are over 50, and their print disability is age-related. For example, because of macular degeneration, they need audiobooks, or maybe they've got arthritis in their hands and they can't hold a book or turn the pages for an extended time period. So they also are looking for audiobooks. And these are people who love reading, have been reading all their lives, and now think that those reading days are over. And as we'll explain, TBBC is here so they can continue reading the books that they want. We also have patrons who qualify for our library as children or teens. And this is the way they learned how to read. They love reading, and this is just, they've always done it with the audio or Braille or large print that they can borrow from us. For reading, some people use smartphones and tablets to listen to audiobooks or for reading Braille. Some are not comfortable with that technology at all. So we send them a machine to listen to our books, and we mail them the audiobooks because they don't want to have to be bothered with the smartphone or tablet. And the New Jersey State Library, they entered into an agreement with the Library of Congress and the Library of Congress for the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. And this arrangement means the TBBC functions as the regional library in New Jersey for the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled, or NLS. NLS itself is a nationwide program that is implemented on the state level. So in New Jersey, what that means is they provide us the Braille and audio books and magazines, and they provide the player to listen to those audiobooks. But at the state level, we are the ones who work one-on-one with the patrons, and we do outreach and visits and things like this program here. Each state runs their program a little bit differently. So in some, their regional library is connected to a public library. That's what they do across the river in Pennsylvania. In other places, it might be part of the Department of Education. And the main thing to remember is NLS provides services to all US citizens or people living in the United States. And in New Jersey, it's done by TBBC. Now, NLS itself was founded in 1931, and is currently celebrating its 90th anniversary of providing services to the blind and print disabled. So there is a lot of information about NLS on the website and how and why it was founded. And in all honesty, talking about that alone could take an hour. And so you can always go to the website and explore that in more detail. For today, what is important to know is that because it's part of the Library of Congress, that it's really much more a creature of laws and regulations than a public library usually is. All those laws and regulations, they basically created the structure we have today where there's that centralized library, NLS is creating the materials, but here at the state level, we're running the program. And also, if you are interested in all those laws and regulations and amendments and the time frame, you can check that out on the NLS page. What's important to remember is, I just have to say that we're governed by those laws, including amendments to the copyright law. And that's what allows us to provide unique services to people who are blind or print disabled. And if there's an abuse of the program, for example, if we sign up someone who's signing up just because they like to listen during their commute, or someone tries to break the software that of how people can listen to the books, it can jeopardize the entire program. And so if you ask a question, if you have a question of like, oh, why do you do things this way? Why is the application that way? What are your requirements for who can join? It all comes back to pretty much NLS says so because of these laws and regulations. And what all those laws and regulations together pretty much mean that NLS can create audio and Braille books for any title that's been published in the United States. It is for folks who are blind or print disabled. There is no limit to the number of copies we have. And what that means is, like, let's say you were to go into a public library and you want to borrow a book. Once you've borrowed that book, no one else can. That's even true if you download. Once you download a book, no one else can borrow that downloaded book until you give it back, because the library's bought a specific number of copies. Thanks to the laws and regulations we have here, we don't have that limit. If someone wants a book, we can get it to them right away. There's no waiting for someone else to return it. And pretty much the only restrictions that we have to follow in exchange for all of that is who can borrow, and also that there's limited ways to listen. And the limited ways means either our player, which we lend out to people, or it means an authorized player. And authorized players include most smartphones and tablets. And then there's also something called the Chaffee Amendment. And this is the specific amendment to the copyright law. And one of the things this does is it says that NLS can do all this, and they can do it without getting permission from the author or publisher. Before this, NLS could do all this, but they still had to get permission from the copyright holder, as long as certain conditions were met. And so having this amendment, it streamlines the process. It makes it so much easier to get things. And it's one of the reasons we can provide the services we do today. And part of this amendment also means is that authors and publishers are not getting paid for the books that we have and distribute. Not the same way, like, if you buy a book from a bookstore or a library buys a book, authors and publishers are getting money from that. Not so for our books. That's a pretty significant thing, that they're not getting money for any of this. But they're okay with it because of who it's benefiting. But again, this is why, we're going to talk a number of times about who can borrow and what's going on. And this is one of the reasons we're so careful about that. And with that in mind, Jen is going to get into more detail about who it is that can borrow materials from us.
Yes, thanks. So as Liz mentioned, our services are for individuals who cannot read standard print or who cannot hold a book. So this could be somebody who is blind, someone who has a visual impairment, where even the print in the newspaper is too small to read comfortably. It could be somebody who has a physical limitation that prohibits a person from holding a book or turning the pages of a book, even if it's for an extended period of time. So that could be arthritis, where it's hard to turn the pages of the book or hold the book. It could be somebody who temporarily cannot hold the book because of an injury or a concussion, or someone with a brain injury. Those with reading disabilities also qualify for services with us. And we also serve places who serve eligible individuals, such as nursing homes, centers that host adult daycares, and libraries. We do have an application that does have to be completed for folks to get signed up for services with us. And the most current version of that can be found on our website. It's the first page of the application has all of the information that's needed for the qualifying patron. So it asks for name, address, phone number, etc. On that page, there's also a checkbox asking how the person qualifies. We don't need any proof of the address. What we do need is basically what we need the information filled out, and basically once we send out information to the person or materials to the person, if it gets returned back to us, that is the proof of the address that it's incorrect. So that's really all we need. The second page of the application is probably the most important part of that application, which requires a signature from a certifying authority. Without that signature, we can't do anything with the application. This person is signing the application to certify that that patron qualifies for services with us. We don't need any medical records or background information to go with the application. That signature is all the proof we need. So because of this, we want to emphasize the importance of making sure that the name, the contact information, place of work, job title, and all of the credentials that have been earned are included on that certifying authority page. The remaining parts of the application ask what type of services the person would like from us and how they would like to receive those services. So as you can see on this example of the certifying authority page, which is page 2 of that application that I just mentioned, the certifying authority would put their name and their credentials. So for this, we used Riley Smith, MSW, or whatever degree was earned on the authority name line or the title and occupation line. Also on that title and occupation line include the title and also the name of the organization. So we were very creative here and used social worker at organization name. Also include the address, the phone number, email, and then the electronic signature. And for this, the electronic signature is nothing more than just typing on the line for the authority signature line. That fancy font happened as soon as I typed the name on the line, and then obviously adding the date that it was signed. So speaking of electronic signatures, that is actually something that's new, relatively new for us. We can now accept those electronic signatures. Prior to the change to this, we required an actual signature on the application. So that meant that you could fill out most of the information online, but you'd still have to print the application. You'd still have to physically sign it and then either scan it and email it to us or actually put it in the mail. So now that we can accept the electronic signatures, which simply requires the certifying authority name to type his or her name on that line on the application, along with all that other necessary information, it can then be submitted to us by email just in this format. There's no additional requirement to print it out and mail it to us. So once the entire application is complete, you can send it on over to us and we can process that application. What's nice about that is it's the most direct and it's the fastest way to get a patron signed up for services, because you're not waiting on the mail and you're not waiting for us to receive it in the mail and get to process it. If you do choose to not submit the application electronically, you will still need to then print it out, actually sign the application, and then mail it back to us. And we do ask that if you are going to choose that way to do it, to just make sure that it's a clear and legible signature so that we can make sure that it's you who signed it. Also, if the certifying authority is submitting applications for more than one person, each person needs his or her own application filled out with a signature and detailed information on each one. So just because it's been signed once for one person does not mean the information carries over for all the other applications. Each person needs a separate and a complete application. Recently, the list of people who can certify an application has changed. So all of this information can be found on the application. It has always included doctors of medicine, doctors of osteopathy, ophthalmologists, optometrists, registered nurses, and so on. It's here that we see the new updated changes to the certifying authority list. This now expands to include educators, certified reading specialists, school psychologists, and librarians. These are all people who can sign for any disability, but the biggest impact will be for those with a reading disability who qualify with a reading disability. Because these individuals that can now certify the application, they tend to work more closely with those with reading disabilities. And the reason this is so noteworthy is because it now means that those who qualify with the reading disability, they no longer require just an MD or a DO signature like they did prior to this change. So this levels the playing field for everyone. It removes the hurdle that those with reading disabilities faced by needing an MD or DO signature, which could have included a cost for having to go to the doctor for copays or office visits. So it's much easier now for those with reading disabilities to get services from us, with these new added professions that can now certify the application for reading disabilities. And right now I'm going to turn it back over to Liz for a little bit.
Okay, I'm just going to talk a bit about our services and what we offer. We have Braille and we have audiobooks. Both can be in a physical format, a Braille book or an audiobook. And the audiobook then is preloaded on a flash drive. We don't use CDs. And then that book or audiobook is mailed to our patrons. Or it can be an electronic format. Both our Braille and our audiobooks can be downloaded. We also lend the machine, and there's in the lower left-hand corner is a picture of the machine that we can loan to people to listen to our books. It's about the size of a hardcover book. Or people can play it on their own machine. There's a handful of things that players that are authorized to play our books. And most smartphones or tablets have been authorized to play our books, so people can listen to them using their own iPhone or iPad or Android device or Kindle Fire. The Braille books can also be downloaded, and to read them, you need something called a Braille refreshable display. And at the moment, we are even lending Braille refreshable display keyboards to patrons as part of a limited pilot program to help them with downloading the Braille and being able to read that way. And we're going to be discussing some of this in greater detail later on. As I mentioned earlier, the laws that NLS works under means that we can create audio, that they create audio and Braille books. They do not provide us with large print books, but large print books are in demand by people who qualify for our program. Now, because many public libraries already have adult large print collections, we decided not to carry adult large print because most people will be able to go to their local public library and borrow directly from them, or use ILL to interlibrary loan to get that large print. But we did notice that not many libraries, public libraries, were carrying large print books for children and teens. So we decided to concentrate on that area so that we could have a statewide collection of large print books. And we like to say that our collection is the largest in the state. It covers grades 3 up to high school. If someone's interested in the large print collection, we can mail it to the student either to school or to home, or both, depending upon what's most convenient for the student and the family. The large print collection itself could be an hour-long program. So if anyone does have information on this and what we have, just let us know, and we can give you more information on that on our large print collection. I mentioned that we have Braille, so we also have some images of our Braille books right there. On the left, we have an image of print Braille books, and that's basically a picture book that has both printing and Braille. And what that is for, like a lot of people often think it's for children who are learning how to read Braille, and definitely we send them out to children learning how to read Braille, the print Braille books. But there's also a big demand for this from grandparents and teachers who are Braille readers who want to read books to their grandchildren or want to read books to their students. So it's also something, even though it's a picture book, is borrowed by our adult patrons. And then we also have a picture of some of our Braille volumes. And these are the books that once you get beyond picture books, it is just the Braille, 100% Braille, and they take up a lot of room. Jen's going to have some pictures later on about just how many volumes one Braille book takes up. We mentioned earlier that our audiobooks are on flash drives, and so we have a couple of pictures of that. The flash drives are basically in plastic cartridges that are easy to handle, and they only work with our machine, the Talking Book Player. These flash drives, one of the things that's nice about them is they can hold several books. Right now, we can loan up to 8 books on one cartridge. So that's nice for patrons because instead of having to send 8 cartridges for 8 different books, it's just one cartridge, so it takes up less room for them. Each comes in a mailing container, and that mailing container can be used to return books to us. And actually, each one of those containers has a mailing label that marks the postage as free matter for the blind and handicapped, so that mailing to and from the patron is no cost. We haven't mentioned it before. All of this is at no cost to the patron. The only time the patron would be spending their own money is if they're wanting to use a smartphone, then they have to use their own smartphone or tablet. We don't provide that for patrons. And everything we mail back and forth, audio, Braille, the large print we were mentioning earlier too, all of that is also free matter. So again, no cost even for mailing things back and forth. We've got a sample of the mailing card here also. And for our audio, what happens is on one side is the mailing address to the patron, and the other has the list of the books that have been sent on the cartridge. And here is basically what is sort of like a picture of our bookshelves in a way. As I said, we don't have our books on a CD, they're on these cartridges, but they're all actually cartridges that we create for people. They're not preloaded with books. So all of the audio is basically digital and stored on a computer hard drive. And what happens if somebody wants a book or somebody wants 10 books, they call us up, they ask for them, we go into their record and we create a unique cartridge just for them. This machine that you see here, it's called the Gutenberg, creates that cartridge with all those books that they want. And it also prints out the mailing card with the list of books that are on that cartridge. So this means that patrons never have to wait because someone else has that book. We just create what we need when we need it. And the reason that we can do that and public libraries can't have to do also with those laws and regulations we talked about, where NLS allows us to create and duplicate books for people who are print disabled. And now back to Jen.
Thanks. So if someone needs it, we do provide the audiobook player that they do need to listen to our books that Liz was just talking about. These players are loaned on an indefinite loan, meaning that the person can hold on for it for as long as they're a patron of our library. What gets circulated back and forth are those cartridges that Liz was talking about that get made for each specific person. We do ask that if a person does have a player that they hold on to the box that the machine has come in, so that if or when they do need to return it for us for whatever reason, they have that box, and that could even be if it needs to be repaired. So on this slide is an image of both of the players that we have available. There is the basic player, which is on the left of this image, and the advanced option, which is on the right of the image of the two players. Each one has the basic functions of play, stop, fast forward, rewind, volume up and down, a sleep timer that allows a patron to set a 15-minute increment that will then turn off. And it also has a tone control and a speed control. These two features are nice because each narrator may have a different style of narration. Therefore, a listener may want to adjust their narrator's tone or speed. So they may be more comfortable listening at a higher or a lower pitch in a person's voice, or they may prefer to listen at a faster or a slower pace. These two options allow those adjustments, but what's nice is that the quality of the narration that's not jeopardized, so it's not turning into Alvin and the Chipmunks if it's super fast or if it goes slow, whatever the opposite of that might be. These may also be helpful for someone with a hearing loss. So adjusting these two settings may help make it an easier listening experience. If, however, that's not enough for a person with a hearing loss, we do also have a high volume player. That player does require a doctor's signature because it is a significant increase in volume, and it could potentially damage a person's hearing if they don't truly need it. The advanced player does have 5 additional buttons that allow for additional navigation, which includes jumping through chapters a little easier, inserting marks in a book, which is the ability to save sections of a book to refer back to later on. So it's kind of like putting a post-it note in a book to be able to go back to refer to. So if you're reading a cookbook and you want to save a recipe, or a student is doing a report and wants to save something to refer back to later on, that mark feature is available for that. And with each of these players, there is also an accessibility option of a breath switch that's available. And unlike the players, the breath switch is something that a patron does not need to return when they're through using it, just because of the nature of the device. So as Liz mentioned, TBBC is also participating in a pilot program to loan Braille e-readers to our patrons. This is a small electronic device that allows patrons to download Braille to the device or receive Braille on a cartridge by mail to play on the device as well. The device is significantly smaller than a hard copy Braille book, which makes it much more portable and easy to carry around and saves quite a bit of space. The size comparison is on this slide. It is one thing to note is that it's not necessarily for someone just learning to read Braille, but someone who is already comfortable with Braille. As a non-Braille reader myself, I struggle using this device and how to navigate it, but someone who's proficient in Braille should have a much easier time using this. In the image on the right, it shows the comparison of the hard copy Braille versus the e-Braille reader. So the e-reader is sitting on top of an open Braille book to show the difference in size. The title that it's sitting on is Killing Floor by Lee Child, and it's a 6-volume book. It's obvious the size alone is much different. The hard copy Braille book it takes up a lot of space. It could take time to arrive by mail, depending on how many boxes it's needed to send it back or to send it out. With the e-Braille reader, patrons can either download the Braille book, that same Braille book, and have it instantly, or we can put it on that cartridge in the image, which is created by the same machine that Liz was talking about before. This is significantly smaller than the hard copy book, and it makes it much more portable. We are one of several pilot libraries testing out the device for our patrons. So if you do know anyone who's a Braille reader and may be interested in participating, please let us know. So far, it's proven to be very popular. It's even had people who had stopped using our library come back because it's so much more compact and small. It also makes accessible devices like this much more equitable, and that it's removing the price barrier for those who may have wanted a Braille e-reader in the past, but couldn't afford one. There are definitely a range of e-readers available on the market with a variety of different features, but this is at least now an e-reader available to all Braille readers and loaned for free. And now back over to Liz.
Thank you. We mentioned how patrons can download books, and the way they can do so is a password protected website called BARD, and that stands for Braille and Audio Reading Download. And pretty much patrons sign into this website and then they can download the audio and Braille. Having this means that they have instant access and the books are available 24/7. We've mentioned mailing things back and forth. Sometimes people don't want to wait for the mail to, and so if you want to listen to a book, you want to listen to it now, not a week from now. And then through this website, patrons can download their books onto a flash drive. They attach it to the machine and the machine we lend them, and they've got the books that they want. BARD Express is listed here. That is basically just a simpler way to download the books from Braille, from BARD rather. In all honesty, we could do an entire hour session on just how to download books from BARD and signing in and searching through that. And so if someone is interested in that, we can arrange that. The important thing to know is that BARD lets you download the books, and BARD Express makes it even easier to download the books. BARD Mobile is what they call the app that allows users to access BARD from their smartphone or tablet, and then play that book on the phone or tablet. I have to say that is my favorite way for accessing books from BARD. It's really easy, and all of those functions with the machine that Jen mentioned, like, the sleep button, all of that are also available on the BARD mobile app. And finally, I just wanted to mention the BARD Pilot Library Program. You might be thinking, okay, all this sounds great for downloading, but you might know some people who just maybe don't have the computer or internet, or are not tech savvy enough to be doing their own downloading. And trust us, with so many of our patrons who are 70 and over, that is definitely an issue, that they either don't have the computer or they don't have the skills. So what about those patrons who kind of want that benefit of BARD to download now instead of having to wait for the mail? Well, the solution we came up is here in New Jersey, we are working with public libraries under something called the BARD Pilot Library Program. And public libraries sign up. We offer training on our library and how to download from BARD. And after that, our patrons can go to those libraries, and those libraries can download the books for them so that they can get it right away. And if you're thinking, oh, you could do that for your library too, we are located in Trenton, and our patrons are all across the state. And so it really wouldn't make sense from somebody at the very north of the state or south of the state to have to drive 2 or 3 hours, or get someone to drive them 2 or 3 hours to our library, when they can go to their local library and have someone download the books for them. And just to talk a little bit more about TBVC Services, just want to say again that we've got no wait lists for these audiobooks, so there's no waiting. The services are at no cost to patrons. Sometimes people hear about us and they think, oh, this sounds like Bookshare, or this sounds like Learning Ally, and both of those have different costs, but we do not. I also wanted to mention we have magazines, so those patrons who love their magazines and are afraid they couldn't read them anymore, because we've got the audio copies of them. And we also have Readers Advisory, which is the fancy library way of just saying we help people find the book that they want to read next. Because we showed you those pictures of how our books are made, it's really hard to browse when everything is just a file in the computer. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but we have, basically we have people who that's what their job is. You call up and say, what do I want to read next? And we help you out with that. Now, at the moment, in terms of how many books we have well over 100,000 titles. And this is children's books, adult books, fiction, and nonfiction. It's a combination of books that have been recorded exclusively for NLS and also books that are available commercially that you could buy in a bookstore. There's a little bit of both. We also have world language books. Now, when I was talking about the Chaffee Amendment, I said books and audiobooks published in the United States. What that used to mean for foreign languages, let's say Spanish, that they could record a Spanish book as long as that book had been written in Spanish and published in the United States. So a few years ago, there was something called the Marrakesh Treaty that the United States entered into. And what this basically means is that NLS can now borrow audiobooks from other countries for NLS patrons to be able to listen to. So let's say there was a Spanish audiobook recorded and published in Spain of a book that was never published in Spanish in the United States. Now we can have that book for our patrons. And I think right now it's up to 30 different languages that are now available, and those world language titles that are available for patrons. And we also have backlist titles. Sometimes you might go to the bookstore and you might find something that's out of print and you can't get it anymore for audio or print. And that never happens with ours. We keep, if a book was made 5, 10, 15 years ago, we still have it on the shelf for people to be able to borrow. And I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of what it means when we say a title's not available commercially from a bookstore. Let's say someone who wants to read of Irish Blood. And here we actually have a list of a bunch of titles that are not available commercially. And we're going to talk about of Irish Blood. So someone comes in and says to you, oh, here's a book I really want. And what do you do to help them find it? Well, the first thing, I know what I do when I want to look for a book is I go to Amazon. So here I go looking for Amazon for Of Irish Blood. And what do I see? There's a Kindle copy, there's a hardcover, there's a paperback, there's a mass market paperback. Always trying to remember what is the difference between the two. But the one thing that's not there is there's no link to Audible. There's no audio. So at this point, the person who wants to read Of Irish Blood is going to walk away being really disappointed because it's not there in audio. But wait, it is. If we go to the next slide and we look at the NLS catalog, the NLS catalog shows that there is an audio recording of Irish Blood for that patron to borrow. Here's a book that a person wanted to read, but they thought they couldn't. And they find out they can. And see, this is what we mean when we say not commercially available. It's only available for our patrons, so you're never going to find it on Amazon. You have to go through NLS to get that book. And I think that we're back to Jen.
Yes. So Liz has mentioned already that we really are not a browsing library. Our shelves of audiobooks are the computer that Liz was talking about that all of our books are stored on that creates those cartridges. And our Braille is housed in a warehouse and it's ordered by a session number. It's not by subject or anything that's browsable. Our large print collection is organized by author last name, and that is really only our browsable collection. So there are several ways that you can get books from us. There is a way you can call our reader services department to order books or ask about books that we may have. We ask that if you are leaving a message to leave a clear message with your name and phone number along with detailed information about the call. Patrons can also email us to request books or to add books to a request list of books that they would like sent. We can also send books automatically based on reading interests. So if patrons don't want to contact us for books and they just want them sent automatically, we can set up a reading profile and have our computer system choose books based off of those reading interests. Our system does maintain a list of books that a patron has read so that they're not sent the same book over and over again. We are able to add subjects of interest, preferred authors, and if patrons do not want books sent automatically that contain violence, strong language, or descriptions of sex, found in the book, we can also set that on their profile. And I'm going to touch on that in just a moment. Just really quick on this slide, what you're looking at is a closer up version of the computer that Liz was talking about. This is basically our shelves of audiobooks. And that's on the image on the left. The image on the right is our shelves of Braille books. And it's just the spines facing us that we look at. It has the title and author and the Braille book number, which again is just in the accession number. There's really nothing to browse here. There's no way to be able to walk up and go to a children's picture book section and say, I want this book. It's just in whatever order we receive it. So how do you find the books then in our collection? A patron can call and speak with a reader's advisor. They can browse talking book topics. And I am going to back up for a moment and say that they can also call our reader services department to order books and ask about the books that we may have. We do ask again that if you are leaving a message to leave that detailed message. And there's also that automatic selection that we talked about. So there's also Talking Book Topics, which is a bi-monthly publication that contains the most recently added books within the last 2 months. This is either sent to patrons by mail, or they may access it online or download it to listen to. You can find that patrons can find books that they're interested in reading and Talking Book Topics. If they do, they can call and email us the request to request those books, or there's an order form in the back that they can fill out and mail to us. There is also the NLS online catalog that contains all of the Braille and audiobooks in our entire collection. These would be titles that we'd have in our library as well. The only thing it wouldn't tell you is if the Braille book is checked in, and also that our large print books are not listed in the NLS catalog, because that's a collection that we maintain separate from NLS. Any audiobook listed, however, should be available unless it's listed as in process, which simply means that we'll be getting it. It's just really new and hasn't been added to the collection yet. And last, once a patron is set up with services from us, we can then set them up with access to our online public access catalog, or our OPAC. It is password protected, so someone does need to be a patron first in order to gain access to this catalog. With this catalog, again, patrons can browse books and add books to their request list, but it's important for them to know that these books are not necessarily sent out automatically. They are just basically set up to be added to a wish list of books that they'd eventually like to read. So if it is something that someone wants more immediate, we do suggest that they call or email us to let us know. This catalog also does not show if the Braille book or the large print book is checked in. It just shows that the title exists in our collection. Because you can't just walk into our library and browse our shelves, there is some additional information that NLS has included in their annotation of the books that may be different than the information you might have seen in other catalogs or other library catalogs. On this screen is an image of a few different annotations from Talking Book Topics. In the first entry, Trouble the Saints, it notes at the end that it's unrated and is a commercial audiobook. So as Liz has mentioned, NLS has agreements with several major publishers to use their audio narration to add to our collection. It's helpful because it means that the book gets added to our collection much faster. It also means, though, that no one at NLS has listened to the book to know if there are instances of violence, strong language, or descriptions of sex. And because a reader can't just walk into our library and grab a book off the shelf where they may notice that the cover looks a little bit violent, or that the annotation alludes to having some strong language or descriptions of sex in the book, NLS adds those annotations to the book so as not to catch a reader off guard. And you can see that notated in the second book listed, which is Paladin's Grace. When it's an unrated book, however, this has not been done for the sake of getting the book added to the collection as quickly as possible. So if a reader has asked to not have books sent that contain violence, strong language, or descriptions of sex, these unrated books would not be sent automatically, just in case that appears in the books. Patrons may, of course, request any of these books specifically, and there are also times where there may be some occurrences of violence, strong language, or sex in the book, which you can also see in Paladin's Grace annotation. In the third annotation, The One and Only Bob, you can see a reading level that's listed there to indicate the audience for the book, the intended audience for that book. Whenever there is no reading level listed in the annotation, like the other two, like Trouble the Saints and Paladin's Grace, whenever there is no reading level, that means it's intended for an adult audience. Otherwise, the reading level will indicate the reading level range for that book. So you might see for grades 2 to 4 or preschool to second grade and so on. All of this information is included in the annotation of the book. So if you are browsing the NLS online catalog, our OPAC or Talking Book Topics, you'll be able to see that information. And if there's those occurrences in any of the books in any of those spots. I just wanted to mention quickly too, a few additional services that we have. We do provide programming and outreach, just like we're doing today, as well as a book club that meets virtually once a month. And that can be more information on that can be found on our website. We do also have a few specific services for our youth services, which is our large print collection. And we do also offer a summer reading program for our youth patrons. And in addition, all of our patrons have access to NFB Newsline, which is an audio news service to provide access to over 500 news publications, both nationwide and local news, weather alerts, job listings, and more. We also work with the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired to offer LEAP Library Equal Access Program, which provides training to New Jersey residents 55 years and older on accessibility features for iPads. Our in-person classes are resuming soon. We're really happy to announce that. And they are held in partnership with local libraries who offer the space to use for the training. CBVI then provides the iPads for the training purposes. So if you do have any questions about that, you can let us know. We do also have a YouTube playlist, which can be found through the State Library's YouTube channel, and it contains a few brief tutorials of searching for BARD, information about our library, and so on. And last, you can find us on social media. If you are not already, be sure to follow us on Facebook. We are part of the State Library's Facebook and Twitter. So here is their Facebook page for the State Library, and you can search for specific posts on TBBC. So this is the Facebook page, and here is the Twitter page at NJ State Library. And I'm going to turn it back over to Liz. Liz, you're muted.
Unmuted now. Thanks, Jen. And real quick, before I talk about the technology loan program, in the chat, Justin O'Toole had asked about libraries, about people who don't live in New Jersey. So I put the link to the NLS website where you can find what your library is for your state. We've mentioned the BARD Pilot Library Program where we work with public libraries, and LEAP where we work with CBVI and again with public libraries for iPads, and NFB Newsline is also another example of us working with another group to serve our patrons. In that case, we're getting audio newspapers to people. Another program we wanted to mention is the Technology Loan Program. This is another one that we do in partnership with CBVI. And basically, CBVI loans technology hardware and software, including CCTVs, to adult clients of CBVI. One such CCTV is pictured here, and the assistive technologies that is loaned can help someone with employment training, and also quality of life. A little bit about the loan program. Under the agreement, CBVI loans the equipment, but TBBC is the one who delivers the hardware and delivers the software. An example of what this might mean is, say someone has a degree in accounting, and now for say something age related or some other reason, they're low vision. Their degree and background in accounting is still there. They, haven't lost all their skills. They just need now another way to read that software, to read that spreadsheet to do their work. So thanks to this loan program, we can loan the software. CBVI teaches the clients how to use that accessible software so they continue to work in their profession. Or if it's a student, they're continuing their education for their employment. And as I said, CBVI provides the training. We prepare, deliver, and support the necessary software and hardware. Another example of one of the things that is sometimes loaned is JAWS, Job Access with Speech. That might be the most well-known screen reading software, but CBVI has other ones too, to try to get the right fit for a person. And for the CCTVs, like the closed circuit televisions, like the ones pictured here, they magnify text, so that way you can read a newspaper, a book, a prescription, even write a check. But they also can change colors of the text and background. And some of them even also have text to speech. And again, that's trying to figure out which is the right CCTV for a person to use. And they can find that out under the loan program. And we talked fast, so I think we managed to come in at time, but we still have a little bit of time for questions.
Yes, there's a lot of information. So please feel free to either unmute yourself or pop your questions in the chat. If anybody has any, we do have a minute or two left. And our contact information is repeated on the screen in case you need it. And we also have listed resources on the conference website as well under our session. And thank you all for joining us today.
Yep, thank you very much.
And we'll hang out for another few moments in case anyone else is typing their question frantically or thinking of it. Feel free to go ahead.
Or like me, they didn't realize that they're still on mute more than once, and so.
All right, well, if anybody thinks of any questions after the fact, again, you have our contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to chat, answer any questions, or expand on anything that we talked about here. Thanks, and we hope everyone enjoys your weekend, and thanks for joining us today.
Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.